So, I'm delighted to be joined by Alex. Alex is Marketing Director for Eve Sleep, and as Eve's website tells us, every great day starts with the night before. But it also tells us that 31 cups of coffee have been drunk so far in the office today, so I'm not sure how good that night before was. What was interesting though, you've got some fantastic reviews on your site. So you guys offer a free trial of mattresses?
Yeah, so we give a 100-night free trial to everyone, and that basically gives people the opportunity to actually test the product. Obviously, we're purely online, so other than our recent nap station that kind of gave people the opportunity to kind of go in and try things out, you don't have that opportunity. So we figured, it makes sense to give that period of time.
I was just looking through some of the reviews, and they were loving our mattress. Sorry, you can't have it back. Best ever sleeps, and simply zzz. Prior to that, Alex, you were at Secret Escapes.
Yes, yeah, it was.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for joining. I have Dan on my right here. So Dan is the email marketing manager for Lovehoney, and Dan's an IDM qualified marketer, currently managing all the email programs. And I'd love to read out some of the reviews off of your site, but I'm not sure if I should. Should I?
Yes, go on. Go for it.
Okay, here we go. All right. Very soft. Fits perfectly as it's stretchy. We'll definitely order more. I love the quirky washing labels, but wondered why you put them on the outside of the protector. Actually, I lied. That's one of yours as well. Prior to that, Dan was with Future Publishing,
yeah, that's
and where you managed all the email programs on specialist titles such as Guitarist, Tech Radar, and Digital Camera.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you. Helen Powell. Helen is the e-commerce innovator at Little Black Dress. I guess that means you make everything happen there, doesn't it?
Yes, it makes me feel like a wizard. It's quite a good title.
That's amazing. I think prior to that, you were with Pretty Little Thing.
Yeah.
You run your own e-commerce gift boutique, and you knit.
Yes.
Amazing. You're a busy girl. Fantastic. Caroline Rolfe, former head of global director of digital at GHD and co-founder of Running in Heels. You've worked at a few places.
Quite a few, yeah.
A few brands. So I've got global directors for GHD, Belstaff, Links of London, and Clinique. So that's fantastic. And you got married last week.
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. Time flies. So thank you. Quickly welcome the panel guys here. That would be amazing. And I wanted to look at some of the questions we've got. So I think it's fair to say that you guys are all at different stages in that personalisation journey. So some are just setting out on there, and some of you are doing some fairly advanced stuff. What would you say, in your experience, either past or present, has been one of the single biggest barrier in creating those communications? And I'll start with you, Caroline.
Well, thanks for that. Yeah. Barrier in communications, well, it's a lot of it is around, if we were just talking email, around creative, around resource, and around kind of breaking down the barriers of traditional marketing thinking with email, which is, get it out to as many people as we can because we've got targets to hit, which I think when you've got big databases, you feel like you can do that, or teams feel like they can do that, and they feel kind of less confident to cut down that database to what you actually would be more relevant because they panic that they need to reach that target.
I think that makes a lot of sense. What about yourself, Dan?
No, it's the same, exactly that sort of thing. And also stakeholder buy-in when you need new technology and new resource to make personalisation happen, proving that to the stakeholders and your managers that it's worth investing in personalisation and communication.
That's actually quite an interesting one. I'm just picking up on that, and I'll put this to you, Alex, I guess. I think obviously there's more investment that's needed, which means buy-in at a higher level. Have you found support from senior management in doing this? Is there enough understanding for that, or is there more education needed at kind of C-level around the need to kind of move through and evolve what we're doing?
I think there's a little bit of a balance there. So, I mean, certainly when I first came into Eve, a kind of CRM structure was almost non-existent, and certainly we were left with a legacy CRM platform that ultimately just doesn't cater to the needs of our business, which means that obviously now we're kind of stuck in this contract. We're now having to work with a platform that really doesn't do what we need it to do. So we're kind of having to find workarounds. We can't access the data we need for it. We can't do the kind of more sophisticated segmentations, even A/B testing, the absolute basics. So that's proven to be quite a challenge. And certainly in terms of investment into, you know, getting additional technology to help that, ultimately until that contract's finished, certainly, you know, as you're a startup or early growth company, your budget isn't endless. So we are intermittently having to kind of work with what we've got, which means if we don't have the data on our customers right now, then we're having to find other ways of engaging them. So some of the ways that we're doing that is essentially kind of creating the sense of community, actually getting the people that have signed up with us or bought with us to offer us their opinions, asking them questions about what products they want to see, kind of keeping them warm with newsletters, like using that kind of strong brand identity and kind of content offering for consumption as an alternative way to engage them and kind of keep them warm.
Fascinating. Okay. That makes sense. And I understand the challenges of, you know, we've all invested in technology and it's like, actually, we've got to now make the case to kind of do more. Just something you've experienced in that, in terms of that kind of senior management support?
Definitely. After quite a lot of back and forth with the board since I've started in terms of a difference of views on base level segmentation and how to take it to a high level of personalisation to give the customers a better experience. So we sell, as a dropship brand, we sell over 50 different brands on site. The end game goal, they always say, is every dress, every woman, every occasion. And you think, why do you think we should give the same experience to all these customers? And we're saying it's for everyone, so we need to get it in. I think just a lot through data and education. I'm such a numbers nerd, so I'm always like sending different various different reports around saying, well, look at this, we could do this or we could be doing this. And I think while they can take a top level view and say, well, our current newsletters, they perform very well, we're above industry standards and we're doing this and we're doing that, I think, yeah, but it could be so much more. And I really think we've built quite a good case within the team in terms of just speaking to customers, you know, breaking down on a very small level different campaigns for different launches we've done with, you know, like celebrities or with new seasons and all things like that. We're already seeing the difference if we just take a completely different approach. So I think gradually.
Right, so it's kind of doing that bit at a time and progressing that way, really, rather than kind of doing it all in one go. And I think that makes a lot of sense as well. And, you know, obviously when we go from that, you know, the kind of traditional way people have been doing stuff by kind of emails out, we need to look at that kind of investment in time, in both time and budget, essentially. But obviously there's a short-term pain with doing that because we're all so busy, right? So how do you offset that kind of long-term benefit of moving forward, because we know we'll get uplift on, you know, more personalised communications, against the sort of, God, how am I going to get my day job done sort of thing? Dan?
That's a good question. I think it's just basically proving the need for extra resource and extra personalisation to your management and the higher ups. So, for example, at a previous company, I was trying to push to do more personalisation and get the extra resource, and they were a bit like, well, we need to prove that it works. So I just took a segment of our people and then split it down into 10 sub-segments and did personalised content to that, and then basically compared that to a control group and said, here's the evidence that...
Okay, great. So you did a small-scale test.
Yeah, I did a small-scale test. I did manually to prove the point that we need
improve.
personalisation resource.
No, that makes sense. Is that something you guys have looked at doing, or are you kind of still constrained a little bit around...
We're still constrained. I mean, being really honest, up until 3 months ago, we didn't even have... I mean, we weren't even sending out newsletters, you know.
Right.
That's how kind of early stage we are. So we kind of are still in that process of creating our welcome programs and kind of running really basic tests at that level, and essentially just getting the foundations right. And I think that's something that's really key, is kind of making sure you're getting the basics down before you kind of run ahead of yourselves. And in some ways, our company is running before it can walk in that aspect, certainly from a CRM aspect anyway.
I think that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? And you know, you guys have probably experienced this yourself. Is like when you're an older brand and you've got so much stuff going in the way, it becomes a challenge. Nicole was talking about great stuff earlier, saying, well, we've got a blank sheet of canvas, we can build this from the ground up with those kind of foundations. What have you? How has that tended in some of the companies you've worked with?
Definitely. When I started at GHD a couple of years ago, the perception was that, you know, they had this big database and that they must do lots of fun stuff with it. But actually, really, what they were doing with their email is using it to launch new product, which was once or twice a year, because it's, you know, they don't have a huge amount of products, and to promote any sales or discounts. And so it was kind of starting with a blank canvas a little bit on the personalisation and email segmentation journey. And actually what we found we needed to do, and where the biggest barrier was actually content. We just didn't have it. And we weren't communicating with our consumers who actually wanted content from us. We weren't looking at the post-purchase journey.
Right.
We were looking at the, sell. Once somebody had converted, we weren't really looking at how to have a communication with them outside of that. And actually what we could do is really kind of use content to take them on a journey towards their next product. And actually our straighteners lasted for an average of 5 years. So that's quite a journey. It's a similar journey to a mattress
or a car,
kind of ownership. Absolutely. So we needed to be a lot more intelligent in terms of looking at how we encouraged use of the product and how we encouraged excitement around the product and for customers to tell friends, to style new looks, to find new ways to fall back in love with their GHD after purchase. And so putting that content layer into the business then enabled us to have that communication, to open up that communication. And it's still going, but very much then has an impact on the rest of the business, how we communicated in social media, how we communicated everywhere, which just didn't exist before. We were much more around the, buy this, and that was kind of about it. So.
No, it makes sense. Is content something that, obviously the more we personalise stuff, again, we've got two challenges. One is having the right data, and two is having the right content to be able to get done. Is this something you guys have got or looking at now?
It's something definitely looking at. We're still a very, very small team at Little Black Dress. There's like a content author, myself, and a designer that's sort of overseeing the whole project. So it's exciting because you still get to get really hands-on and explore ideas. But when you come down to, it's difficult to go through data, then pick where to start and what customers do we chase first, and then where do we pick up. But I think we've sort of entirely left that to where we see the most demand. So we're starting small and then building that up as we proceed.
And we started just by asking the customer, which actually was quite insightful for us because we were running a sort of separate content stream for professional content, and actually the customers wanted to see that too. So actually bringing that kind of professional hair advice into what we were doing, because that actually already existed. It was just a case of putting it all in one place and working out sort of which channel we put it out on.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I guess a lot of you guys have got some of the similar challenges because I'm assuming some of you are doing some fairly advanced stuff, some of you are still kind of setting out on this journey. Can I take some questions from you guys? I have an opportunity to ask these guys some stuff. Here we go. Oh, you've got one. Thank you.
I was wondering, is a list ever too small for segmentation and or personalization? Because that is something that I hear in my workplace a lot, that our list is too small to hyper-personalize things, whereas I wouldn't exactly have the same opinion, but I'm just interested to hear what you think.
I'd say the only problem that you run into when you get small is creative. So if you've got a creative solution for your creative in terms of being able to adapt it for those small lists, and it's not going to be costly, then I don't think any list should be too small. Depends what you're talking about.
I'm actually doing a breakout session this afternoon which will cover some of those actual challenges. So yeah, come and join. Cool. Any other input on that from your experience with kind of going small segments?
I think it's trying to find that sweet spot, not going too small so you don't really get any return on investment and all the work isn't wasted, but also so you do end up doing blast sends to thousands of people with the same content. It's trying to test it and move the scale around to see when is that ideal number of people in a segment, I think, to be honest.
Great, that makes sense. Any other questions from the audience at all? About that? Okay.
Continuing on from that, how many segments do you have?
We've got about 80 strong main segments that we use on a regular basis. We're always creating new ones every day. I sit in the database. I'm a data geek at heart, really. I sit there and just play with the data and build new segments, and we test lots of things. I love Honey. We're quite free to test new ideas and new ways of contacting our customers. So we just build lots of segments and just try it to control groups to see how well it goes, to be honest.
Down the other end, we've got 8, and they're very early. We only started working with them within the last month, I'd say. We do it on customer frequency, and then still on age demographics, because we have regular customers from 18 to over 65. I'm less of a fan of the age demographics. I think it can be really useful in some products, but while we're trying to promote empowerment for women, I don't like having to say, if you're this age, you're going to go buy this dress. It's more, the data we're using now is more what you've previously looked at, what have you previously bought, therefore you move towards this, where I think there's never-ending opportunity for different segments.
Makes sense. Any more? One in the middle there. Thank you.
In terms of actually taking one step back and actually looking at how you're building the segments, I suppose looking at that from a time perspective, given how sometimes manual it is or not manual in the case, how do you guys manage the different data streams to build a segment?
I mean, from our perspective, bearing in mind we're still fairly kind of early on in that stage, we are quite literally just using the platform we've got, and we don't actually have many different streams in which we're acquiring a user's email address. So it's essentially if they've bought, and even then they had to opt in for us to send them additional marketing material. Or on-site, we recently, literally about 2 months ago, added kind of like a pop-up with an email kind of acquisition segment there. And that literally appears like five seconds or so after you've landed on the site. So we're not dealing with many different streams at the moment, which is probably a good thing because, as I mentioned earlier, our platform really isn't built for kind of handling lots of different kind of pools of segmentation at the moment. So, yeah.
Cool. Anyone else want to input to that?
GHD, we're just going through a process of redoing a lot of our segments because a lot of it was based on assumption in terms of what people had purchased and how they'd behaved versus actual knowledge on the consumer. So we did a lot of consumer research into our data and found actually a lot of things that countered the behaviour that we'd assumed they'd had, which was very interesting. So we just aligned a lot of our data sources to give us that information. And we were able to actually restructure and see quite a lot of success from restructuring our assumption about people not purchasing for 5 years, etc. Actually, we were seeing the propensity to purchase an additional item, so a hairdryer or a curler outside of their straightener, was way higher within the first sort of month. So completely changed what we were doing with them, and our ROI from email went quite high up from where it was. So less of the kind of blast assumption emails, more around the data.
Makes a lot of sense. Anyone else? There you go.
For the companies that have a small number of products, such as probably Eve or GHD possibly, other than content, what do you find is the kind of the best method of retaining a customer when you only have, 1 or 2 products, other than obviously making new products?
Great question.
I mean, something we've been trialling recently is essentially engaging the user in the brand, like asking their opinions. So a couple of things we've been running over the past couple of months in our newsletters are basically kind of running, kind of like a survey within the newsletter. So one of the things we did was, what product would you most like to see next if Eve were to bring out a new product? And we literally put a baby bed or a dog bed, and we had a huge response from that, surprisingly so. The dog bed won, so apparently people prefer their dogs over their babies. But yeah, and then we ran a second one after that as well. I can't actually remember what it was, but again we saw a really high engagement thing. And we've literally last week did another one asking people to basically send us their best sleep tips, and that we basically post those in our blog, which would obviously then be posted on kind of our social media channels and featured in our newsletter, etc. So it's kind of building this sense of community. It's, I think, more and more so people want to consume something that means something and that they can kind of have a piece of, even if it's really tiny. And social media now is kind of such an everyday kind of thing that people are using, consuming, communicating on. If you can find a way of like resonating with people individually, but almost like on a mass level as well, it kind of, as I was saying earlier, it kind of keeps them warm. So when you are ready to kind of launch a new product, you know, you've kind of got a soft to sell in, and they're so engaged in the brand already that they almost feel like they've had a part to play in it as well. So that's what we're doing at the moment.
Yeah, I was going to say content, I think, was the key thing for us, and getting the consumer involved, absolutely. So we did a lot of stuff around when we were launching new products, getting our sort of VIP consumer base to trial the product first, even before it was launched. So sending them the product, getting them to review it, and also giving them access to sort of events that we were doing, that sort of thing, to really keep them engaged. But keeping them engaged over quite a long period of time is hard work. So we had a whole sort of content stream set up ready to engage them. Content.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm conscious to keep you all on time for your caffeine because I certainly need some already. Final thought before we wrap up. If you were setting out again now on this journey, give me one piece of advice you can give to these guys here of what something they need to think about, Dan.
Not to personalise for personalisation's sake. It's probably good. When I see a lot of companies personalising because they can. So a good example was a supermarket emailed me the other day saying, you win our store for the first time at 10 p.m. on a Tuesday, reviews the store. And I was a bit like, telling me when I was there and what day is a bit much. If it had just been, you've been there for the first time, please review it. I would have been, okay, that's cool, but just go into that level of detail. I know they have it, but...
We're on the creepy stuff.
Yeah, it sort of gets a little bit creepy.
Cool, thank you. And Helen?
I'd say always sort of safeguard yourself against assumptions, and you know, everyone that works in the business can think, oh, I know this because when I had my old job, this happened. And you've got to think every different customer group will be completely different. So just always test yourself before you start making judgment calls and things like that.
Yeah, mine's on the similar lines. Yeah, don't make assumptions around customer behaviour. Make decisions based on data.
Sensible.
Coming into that on a slightly more practical level, as I kind of mentioned earlier, think about the type of platform that you're using as well. As I said, kind of probably more relevant for early stage companies, but you know, even as you grow, you know, you need to think about not what you need right now, but what do you need in 6 months, 12 months, 2 years. You know, think about the scaling time and making sure you've got those processes and like platforms in place to kind of cater for that.
Wise words. Guys, Dan, Alex, Caroline, Helen, thanks so much. And I'll hand you back to James.